In this video, we'll show you how to replace your left front inner fender liner on this Mercury Grand Marquis between the year ranges of 2003 and 2011. The inner fender liner will be located behind this area and also up inside the engine compartment along the driver's side. Let's get started. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing I want to mention is you're going to have to make your way into the wheel well. So with that said, you're going to have to safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so you have a little bit of gap in between the wheel and the fender. Inside the engine compartment, we're going to have to remove several things from the top of the fender liner. We'll start with removing the air filter housing box and inlet tube. To remove this, start by removing the wiring from the mass airflow sensor. Underneath this connector, you're going to find a red locking tab. Use a small screwdriver. Gently pry that tab away and then squeeze on the push tab to release the connector. There's that red locking tab and the squeeze tab right next to my index finger. We'll give this a quick check for corrosion. Assuming it looks good, set that wiring aside. With that disconnected, we can follow the air inlet up to this breather hose. On the back side of the breather hose, there's a little green tab that you can gently pry down and then slide this out of position. Now we can move along to loosening the clamp that holds the inlet tube to the throttle body. For this, you can use a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. Once that's loose, we'll go ahead and pull that right off of the throttle body. Let's continue on to removing our three 11mm mounting nuts. You'll find that you have two of them along the back side of the air filter housing box and one along the front. Let's remove all three. Inspect your hardware as you remove it, replace it as necessary. Once you have all three of those out of there, we'll continue on by safely lifting this up and out of here. Set this aside. Let's continue on to removing the washer fluid tank from the area. To remove this, you'll find that you have two 11mm headed bolts holding this in place. Remove both. Let's grab that tank. Now as we start to pull this away, you're going to want to look down along this side. Now what we're looking for here is this two-wired connector. Go ahead and grab onto that. That leads to the washer fluid pump. We'll squeeze in the little push tab where my index finger is and pry that right off of there. A quick check for corrosion. We can set the wiring aside. Now we'll take this entire thing and bring it up and over along the top of the engine. While you're moving that, you'll find that you have an area that your washer fluid hose connects onto the top of the inner fender liner. We'll use a small trim tool and gently pry this out of place, being careful not to break the washer fluid hose. There we are. Now we can set all this aside. Let's continue on with our trim tool and start removing our air compressor air line from the fender liner. Come right along here. Pop that right out of there. Just give that a quick check. Make our way over to the other one. There we are. Now let's carefully start removing the computer from the area. First, we'll start with our 8mm headed bolt that holds the computer to the bracket. Now you can grab the computer, start sliding it rearward away from this area. Carefully rest that aside, making sure that you're not going to damage it in any way. Now we can remove our bracket from the area. You'll find that you have 3 8mm headed bolts, 1 in the front, 2 along the rear. Remove your bracket and set it aside. Let's continue rearward with our trim tool to dislodge our wiring harnesses from the fender liner. Now we can move up along the front. Let's dislodge this. We'll make our way up here. Disconnect the electrical wiring for the air compressor. For this, you're going to find that you have 2 locking tabs, 1 on either side. The second one on ours is broken. All you want to do is carefully get underneath this area, gently pry it up, and separate it. You can do this easily by using a small pocket screwdriver. Pop that out of there. Quick check for corrosion. Set that aside. While we're up in this area, let's remove our 1 8mm headed bolt. We'll continue on with our trim tool and remove this area from the fender liner as well. On it, you're going to find that you have 5 push clips holding it in place. Remove all of them and this area. We'll set this aside. Now, if you were to raise the vehicle by the frame, you're going to notice that the suspension lowers just enough that you can make your way into the wheel well to start removing your 2 8mm headed bolts. You'll find 1 along the front here and 1 along the back. Remove the pair. From underneath the driver's side front of the vehicle, we're going to be looking at the bottom of the wheel well, right where that compressor is located. Under this area, you'll find that you have 3 8mm headed nuts that hold the compressor down to the wheel well. Remove all 3. Let's get this last one and then we can slide out from under here. Now let's make our way back into the engine compartment. From in the engine compartment, go ahead and grab onto that air suspension pump, lift this up and out of here and set it aside. Now while we still have the vehicle up and off the ground, we want to make sure that we have plenty of area underneath this front bumper, because as we start pulling this fender liner down, it's going to need to make its way under this area and also out through the fender well. From up inside the wheel well, let's carefully break this free and push it rearward, making its way under this area. As we bring this down, be extremely careful for your ABS wire. We'll just make sure we put this up nice and high. Now let's make our way into the wheel well and start pulling this out. We'll just start tilting this a little bit. Now we'll start bringing the compressor tray down underneath the front bumper cover and carefully pulling it out of place. Let's continue on with our small pocket screwdriver or a pick. We're going to start removing each of these 3 clips. To remove the clips, we'll come right into the center. There's a little tab that you can gently get underneath, pry this up just enough that you can slide the clip out of place. Inspect the mounting hardware, set it aside. Once all 3 of those clips are out of there, we'll continue on to each of these 2 studs. To remove these studs, use some pliers. We'll grab on to the bushing area here, and then from the other side of this, we're going to remove an 11mm nut from each. Do the same to the other one. There it is, friends. Okay, friends, now it's time for the installation of our inside fender liner. Let's start with the mounting hardware. We'll take one of these and put it in place. You'll find that you have one that goes here, and the other one goes right there. We'll slide this down into place. We can roll this and start on our 11mm mounting nut. Once that's started, go ahead and snug it up. We'll do the same to the other one. Now we can install our 3 mounting clips. You'll find on one side of each of the clips you have an area that protrudes outward. You want to make sure that you have that outward area facing down towards where the wheel would be. We'll slide this right into position. Listen for a click, make sure that's secured. Do the same to the other 2. Let's put this in place. We're going to lay it on its side and gently put it underneath the front of the bumper cover here. Now we can start lifting this up into the proper positioning. As we're bringing it up, we'll also be rotating it. With this up in here, we're going to be paying attention along the front. Bring that over. All right, let's make our way into the wheel well. Now we can start in our 2 large washer 8mm headed bolts. Once you have both of them started, snug them up. Make your way back into the engine compartment and put in your 8mm headed bolt. Now we can bring over that air compressor, paying attention to each of our 3 mounting studs, making sure they align with those holes as we slide it into position. Let's attach this. You'll notice along the bottom you have this area that protrudes out, goes directly into the body of the vehicle. Now you can roll this up and put in your push clip. Just get that in position. Connect in your air pump connector. Press that in. Give it a wiggle to make sure it's secure and tuck it away. Now let's re-secure our air line. Press that in. Make our way up here. Let's make our way towards the back of the fender liner and reinstall the mounting clips for the wiring harnesses. Continue on with the bracket for your computer. You remember that you had 3 8mm headed bolts holding this in place. Those go into each of these 3 clips that you had installed. Once all of them are started, snug them up. Now we can reinstall the computer. You want to make sure you pay attention to the fact that it has this hook right along here, and then there's a second one along the driver's side of this bracket. Let's put this down and slide it forward into position. Once it's locked in, continue on with your 1 8mm headed mounting bolt. Start this in by hand and then snug it up. Let's install this piece right here. You remember that you had 5 push clips making their way around. Looking down at the fender liner, you'll find the 5 mounting holes for each of those push clips to go into. Line it up, put it in place. Re-secure your ABS wire. Now let's make our way under the vehicle for our 3 mounting nuts that hold down the compressor to the fender liner. We'll start each of these on, snug them up, and then torque them to 44 inch-pounds. Now let's continue on to reconnecting our washer fluid pump. Press that down, give it a wiggle to make sure it's completely secured. Now we'll put this up against the side of the vehicle here and start in our 2 11mm mounting bolts. Now let's install our air filter box and air inlet tube. Attach the air inlet tube to your throttle body up along the top of the engine here. We'll align this with its corresponding mark. Press that in as far as you can, and make sure you tighten your clamp. Continue on to your breather hose. Now we can continue on with our mounting nuts. We'll start each of these on here. Once all three of them are started, go ahead and snug them up. Time to reconnect your mass airflow sensor. Go ahead and press this in, and then make sure you lock it in with this locking red clip. Now that we have everything back together, you just want to ensure that everything is nice and tight. You don't want any dirty or unmetered air making its way into the engine. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.